The emergency alarm screamed through Sanctuary 7's corridors, their piercing wail making Doctor's crystalline appendages vibrate with sympathetic resonance. He moved quickly through the medical bay, his 4 legs carrying him with the practiced efficiency of 2 decades spent in emergency medicine. Behind him, his staff scrambled to prepare for incoming casualties. "Pirate attack," his assistant Thera called out, her vocal sacs pulsing with stress. "Cargo hauler, multiple casualties incoming, ETA 3 minutes." Doctor felt the familiar tightness in his thorax that came before every emergency. The had evolved on a world of hidden dangers where the wrong move meant death. That evolutionary memory served him well in medicine, where caution saved lives. He checked the surgical suite one final time, ensuring every instrument was ready, every scanner calibrated. Whatever came through those doors, he would be prepared. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud that reverberated through the station's hull. Doctor positioned himself at the medical bay entrance, his healing appendages already extending in anticipation. The doors hissed open. The first survivors stumbled in, 3 traders with minor burns and a pilot clutching a fractured arm. Standard injuries. Doctor directed them to treatment areas with quick efficiency. Then he saw what came next. A human was carrying something massive. Doctor's entire body locked up, every instinct his species possessed screaming a single word: predator. The thing in the human's arms was enormous, easily twice the human's size, with midnight black scales that gleamed under the medical bay's lights. 6 limbs, each ending in claws that could disembowel with one swipe. Rows of serrated teeth visible in a mouth designed for tearing flesh. And blood. So much blood, dark and viscous, dripping onto the pristine medical floor. A war beast, an apex predator bioengineered for one purpose: killing. "Please," the human gasped, his face pale with exertion and smeared with the creature's blood. "Please, he's hurt bad, he needs help." Doctor took an involuntary step backward. Behind him, he heard Thera's gasp of pure terror. The physician who'd been treating the pilot simply fled, his survival instincts overriding any professional obligation. "Get that thing out of here," Doctor heard himself say. The words came automatically, driven by evolutionary programming. His species had survived by fleeing from predators, not treating them. "He's dying," the human said, his voice cracked with desperation. "Please, you have to help him. His name is. He's not dangerous, I swear, he just needs." "Not dangerous," the words came from Doctor's chief nurse, a normally composed named. She was pressed against the far wall, her appendages withdrawn completely into her carapace. "That is a war beast. Do you understand what that means? They were created to kill. It's what they do." The human, his uniform identified him as mechanic, adjusted his grip on the massive creature. Breathing was labored, each exhale producing a wet rattling sound that Doctor recognized immediately as lung damage. The plasma burn across the beast's thorax was severe, degree at minimum. The forelimb hung at an unnatural angle, clearly shattered. Professionally, clinically, Doctor could see that the creature was suffering, but every fiber of his being recoiled from approaching it. "I can't treat that," Doctor said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Station protocol is clear. Dangerous predator species require specialized containment and sedation procedures we don't have here. The risk to my staff is too great." "He's not a predator," insisted. "He's my friend." The absurdity of the statement might have made Doctor laugh under other circumstances. Friend. Humans had been part of the galactic community for barely 30 years, and they still didn't seem to understand basic survival principles. You didn't befriend apex predators. You avoided them, contained them, or destroyed them. Made a sound then, a low keening that raised every danger signal in Doctor's nervous system. The beast's eyes, pure black, without iris or pupil, fixed on the gathered medical staff. His lips pulled back, revealing more teeth than Doctor had seen outside of paleontology texts. "Everyone out," Doctor ordered, Clear the medical bay now. His staff didn't need to be told twice. They fled, leaving only Doctor and his sense of professional duty warring with his terror. He reached for the communication panel. Security to medical bay. We have a dangerous animal situation. Bring tranquilizer protocols. No, Shout was desperate. Don't you understand? The tranquilizers will kill him in his condition. The plasma burn damaged his respiratory system. If you sedate him now, he'll stop breathing. Then I recommend euthanasia, Doctor said, hatting himself even as he spoke the words. It's the merciful option, quick, painless, better than letting him suffer. Something changed in the human's expression. The desperation transformed into something harder, more determined. Shifted, lowering carefully to the medical bay floor. The movement must have caused the creature pain because he snarled, a sound that made Doctor's legs tremble. You're not touching him, said quietly. If you won't help, then get out of my way. Security arrived then, 4 armed guards with their weapons drawn. The lead guard, a named, took in the scene with experienced eyes. Sir, we need to remove the creature from the station, said to Doctor. It's too dangerous to remain here. You'll have to go through me, said. He positioned himself between and the security team, his body language radiating defiance. It was insane. A single human against trained security, defending a creature that could kill him with one bite. Step aside, commanded. Don't make this difficult. Tried to rise, his good limbs scrambling for purchase on the smooth floor. The snarl became a roar, blood spraying from his mouth with the effort. He was trying to protect the human, Doctor realized with shock. The war beast, bred for killing, was attempting to defend his companion even while mortally wounded. Last warning, said, his weapon charging with a high-pitched whine. Did something then that would replay in Doctor's memory for years to come. Instead of stepping aside or continuing to argue, the human knelt. He knelt beside the thrashing, bleeding predator, placing himself directly in the path of those terrible jaws. One hand came to rest on scaled head, right between his eyes. Relax, buddy, whispered. His voice was soft, gentle, completely at odds with the violent scene. I've got you. Nobody's going to hurt you, I promise. The effect was instantaneous. Thrashing stopped. His breathing, while still labored, steadied. The snarl faded into something almost like a whimper. The massive predator, who moments before had looked ready to tear apart everyone in the room, became still under the human's touch. Doctor stared. The security team stared. Through the medical bay windows, the staff who'd fled now pressed their faces against the transparent aluminum, watching in disbelief. How? The word escaped Doctor before he could stop it. Didn't look up, his attention focused entirely on. His other hand moved to the creature's neck, finding the major artery there and checking his pulse. His heart rate's too fast, said, his voice still soft and soothing. He's going into shock. I need bandages, antiseptic, and something for the pain. Also a splint for his leg. Do you have those things or not? You can't treat him yourself, Doctor said. You're not qualified, you're a mechanic. Yeah, and mechanics fix broken things, replied. He's broken. I'm fixing him. Now are you going to help or are you going to stand there while he dies? The challenge hung in the air. Doctor looked at the human, then at the war beast lying so still under his touch. Eyes were half closed now, no longer tracking the room's occupants as threats. His breathing had slowed to something approaching normal. A prey species didn't approach a predator. That was fundamental law, written into Doctor's genes by millions of years of evolution. But standing there, watching a human kneel beside a creature specifically designed to kill, Doctor felt something shift in his understanding of the galaxy. Sir, asked, his weapon still raised, what are your orders? Doctor's appendages trembled. He was afraid, terrified if he was honest. Every instinct demanded he order security to remove both human and beast, to restore safety to his medical bay. But another part of him, the part that had dedicated his life to healing, couldn't look away from suffering. "Lower your weapons," Doctor said quietly. "Sorry." "I said lower your weapons, and someone get me the emergency supplies. If the human wants to play doctor, the least we can do is provide proper materials." Looked up then, meeting Doctor's eyes. The gratitude in the human's expression was profound. "Thank you," he said simply. Doctor approached slowly, his legs unsteady. Each step closer to the predator felt like walking toward death. But the human was right about one thing. He couldn't stand by and watch something suffer, no matter how terrifying it was. "I'm not promising anything," Doctor said. "And if that creature makes one wrong move, security will put it down. Understood?" "He won't," said with absolute confidence. "Watch." The human's hand moved from his head to his chest, right over the plasma burn. The war beast flinched but didn't pull away. Murmured something in a language the translator didn't catch, more sound than words, and settled again. Thera appeared with the emergency supplies, setting them just within reach before retreating to a safe distance. Doctor's appendages extended toward the medical kit, then toward. Every movement felt like defying gravity itself. "Talk me through his physiology," said. "I know human first aid, but I don't know biology." And just like that, Doctor found himself kneeling across from a human, treating a predator that should have been impossible to approach. The next few hours, he suspected, were going to change everything he thought he knew about medicine. Or perhaps about what it meant to be brave. The bandages in Doctor's appendages felt heavier than they should. He moved slowly, deliberately, every motion calculated to avoid startling the massive predator lying on his medical bay floor. His eyes tracked him, those bottomless black orbs that had terrorized his nightmares since childhood. But the war beast didn't move, didn't snarl. The human's hand remained on his head, a connection that somehow kept the creature calm. "The cardiovascular system is similar to most carbon-based species," Doctor explained, forcing himself to focus on the clinical details rather than his fear. "But have a dual heart configuration. Primary heart here," he gestured with an appendage, "and secondary here. Both must remain functional or the circulatory system collapses." Nodded, his eyes sharp despite his exhaustion. "The plasma burn, did it damage either heart?" "I can't tell without scanning him," Doctor admitted. "But the location suggests the secondary heart may be compromised. That's why his breathing is labored. The primary heart can't handle full circulation alone." "Then we need to reduce his oxygen demands," said. He was already working as he spoke, cleaning the burn with steady hands. The antiseptic must have stung because made a low, rumbling sound, but the human simply increased the pressure of his touch, murmuring reassurances. "Keep him calm, keep him still. Can you scan him without moving him?" Doctor had to admit the human understood triage. Moving to a scanning bed was impossible without sedation, and sedation would likely kill him, which meant they needed to bring the equipment to him. "Thera," Doctor called to his assistant, who was still watching from behind the transparent barrier. "Bring the portable scanner and the regeneration unit." He saw her hesitate, saw the fear in her posture, but professional training won out over instinct. Thera entered the medical bay slowly, her movements jerky with suppressed panic. She placed the equipment within reach and retreated quickly, never taking her eyes off. Doctor activated the scanner, positioning it over the war beast's thorax. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the internal damage in brutal detail. The secondary heart was intact but operating at 40% efficiency. The plasma burn had seared through 3 inches of scaled hide and muscle tissue, damaging major blood vessels and one lung lobe. "He needs surgery," Doctor said. "Full reconstructive work on the cardiovascular system, at least 6 hours in the surgical suite." "Then let's get him there," said. "You're not understanding me," Doctor replied, his appendages gesturing at the scan results. "I cannot perform surgery on an apex predator without proper sedation. The risk of him waking during the procedure and attacking the surgical team is too high. It violates every safety protocol we have. What if I stayed with him? Asked. During the surgery, what if I was there to keep him calm? The suggestion was so absurd that Doctor almost laughed. You want to be present in the surgical suite while we operate on a war beast. Do you understand how dangerous that is? More dangerous than letting him die. Eyes met Doctor's, and the Doctor saw something there he hadn't expected. Absolute determination mixed with profound compassion. Look, I get it. You're scared. Your entire species is probably hardwired to run from things like, but humans. We learned a long time ago that the scariest things can also be the most loyal. That's impossible, Doctor said. Predators don't form loyalty bonds with prey species. We're not prey, said simply. He resumed his work on the burn, applying dermal regenerator gel with practiced motions. We're humans. We don't fit into your predator-prey categories. You want to know how I bonded with, I'll tell you. Doctor found himself leaning forward, genuinely curious despite his fear. Around them, the rest of the medical staff had crept closer to the windows, drawn by the same fascination. Was bred on a military station, explained. The military compact creates war beasts for shipboarding actions and ground assault. They're trained from hatching to be weapons. But he failed every aggression test. Too gentle, they said, not killer enough, so they marked him for disposal. The human's hand moved gently along his neck, finding the spots that made the creature's eyes close in contentment. Doctor watched, amazed, as the predator essentially melted under the touch. I was doing maintenance work on that station, continued. Heard about the disposal schedule and decided to take a look. Found in a holding cell, scheduled for termination in 6 hours. He was terrified. This massive war beast, created to be fearless, was shaking like a leaf. Why would you care? The question came from Thera, who had edged closer without realizing it. It was just an animal, a dangerous one. Shook his head. On Earth, we have a saying, judge a society by how it treats its animals. The created trained him, and when he didn't meet their standards, they were going to kill him. Not because he was aggressive or dangerous, but because he wasn't aggressive enough. That didn't sit right with me. So you took him, Doctor said. Stole him is more accurate, replied with a slight smile. Cost me my job on that station. Had to bribe 3 guards and hack the security system. Got onto my ship and ran like hell. Best decision I ever made. Doctor applied the regeneration unit to his burn, watching the tissue slowly begin to knit together at the cellular level. The war beast remained still, his breathing steady. It was remarkable, unprecedented. A predator submitting to treatment from prey species because a human had shown him trust. The first 3 months were hard, continued, his voice taking on a distant quality as he remembered. Didn't trust anyone. He'd hide in the cargo hold, wouldn't eat unless I left the food and went away. I think the military training had taught him that other species meant pain, so I had to teach him something different. How? Doctor asked. Patience, consistency. I'd sit outside the cargo hold for hours just talking to him. Didn't matter what I said, just that I was there. Eventually, he started coming closer. Then one day, he fell asleep with his head in my lap. After that, we were inseparable. The regeneration unit beeped, indicating the first phase of treatment was complete. Doctor examined his work, pleased despite his fear. The burn was stabilized, the damaged blood vessels sealed. But the deeper damage, the compromised heart and shattered limb, required more intensive care. I need to make a decision, Doctor said. Either we move him to surgery now, with you present to keep him calm, or we euthanize him. Those are the only options. I cannot in good conscience leave him in this condition. His jaw tightened. Surgery, whatever it takes. I won't let him die because people are afraid. The words stung, but Doctor couldn't deny their truth. He was afraid. His entire staff was afraid. But fear, he was beginning to understand, wasn't always wisdom. Sometimes it was just instinct, and instincts could be wrong. Thera, doctor said, turning to his assistant. Prepare surgical suite 3, full cardiac configuration, and tell I need her on vascular reconstruction. You're actually going to do this? Thera's voice squeaked with disbelief. I'm a doctor, doctor replied. My oath is to heal regardless of species. Besides, he gestured at the human and the war beast, if he can be brave, so can I. Moving to the surgical suite took 20 minutes and every anti-stretcher they had. The war beast tolerated it only because walked beside him the entire time, one hand never leaving his scales. Doctor marveled at the bond between them. The human trusted the predator completely, and the predator returned that trust without reservation. The surgical suite was designed for patients, which meant Doctor had to improvise for size. They extended the surgical bed, recalibrated the monitors for physiology, and positioned the overhead surgical arms for maximum reach. Through it all stood its head, speaking in that low, soothing voice. I'll need you to step back during certain procedures, Doctor said as he scrubbed his appendages. The surgical lasers can be dangerous if you're too close. Just tell me when, replied, and tell me what you're doing. If I can explain it to, he'll stay calmer. It was insane, explaining surgery to a war beast as if he could understand, but Doctor had seen enough in the past few hours to suspend his disbelief. Arrived, her initial terror giving way to professional curiosity as she examined the scans. The vascular damage is extensive, she said. We'll need to bypass the damaged section entirely and regrow the vessels using the regeneration matrix. How long? Doctor asked. 6 hours minimum, maybe 8. Doctor looked at, expecting protest. Instead, the human simply nodded. We've got time, said. Right, buddy, you're strong, you can do this. Made a sound, something between a rumble and a purr. Doctor activated the surgical field, the sterile energy barrier humming to life. Then he picked up his first instrument and began the most terrifying surgery of his career. The first incision revealed the extent of the damage. The plasma burn had cooked the tissue, leaving dead cells that needed to be removed before healing could begin. Doctor worked methodically, his appendages moving with practiced precision. Beside him, managed the vascular work, her smaller appendages perfect for the delicate task of rebuilding blood vessels. Every few minutes, Doctor would glance at the monitors, checking vitals. The war beast's heart rate remained elevated but stable. His breathing was steady, and through it all, the human stood at his head, maintaining that constant physical contact. Why do humans do this? Doctor asked after 2 hours of surgery. Form bonds with predators, I mean. It seems contrary to survival. Was quiet for a moment, thinking. Maybe that's exactly why we do it. Humans have always been fascinated by things that can kill us. We climbed mountains, dove into oceans, explored caves. We saw danger and decided to understand it instead of just running away. That sounds like insanity. Maybe, agreed. But it's also how we survived. Earth is a death world, Doctor. Everything there is trying to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the microbes. We could have spent our entire evolution hiding in caves. Instead, we went out and made friends with the wolves. Wolves. Pack predators, apex hunters. Humans domesticated them thousands of years ago, turned them into dogs, our best friends and loyal companions. We've been doing it ever since. Horses, cats, even reptiles and birds. If it can be befriended, humans will try. Doctor carefully sealed a blood vessel, watching the regenerated tissue take hold. And he was designed to be a weapon. Can such a creature truly be a friend? He already is, said simply. His hand moved gently along his head. The tried to make him into something he wasn't. I just let him be himself. Turns out himself is pretty great. The surgery stretched into its 6th hour. Doctor's appendages ached from the precision work, but he pushed through. Beside him was finishing the final vascular connections, her work flawless despite the unusual patient. The secondary heart is responding, she reported. Efficiency increasing. We're at 60% and climbing. Good, doctor said. He began closing the surgical site, layering regenerated tissue over the repaired organs. The hardest part was done, would survive. As if sensing the change, the war beast stirred slightly, increased his contact, murmuring reassurances, settled again, trusting even in his vulnerable state. Doctor stood back, examining his work. The surgical site was clean, the repairs solid. The splinted forelimb would heal with time. Against all odds and every protocol, they had saved the predator's life. He'll need to stay under observation for 72 hours, doctor said, and the limb will require additional surgery once the primary injuries heal, but he'll live. Shoulders sagged with relief. For the first time since arriving at the station, he allowed himself to show his exhaustion. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for giving him a chance." Doctor looked at the human, then at the war beast, then at his staff watching through the observation window. They had witnessed something unprecedented today. Not just the surgery, but the courage it represented. The willingness to see past instinct and fear to the individual suffering beneath. Doctor looked at the human, then at the war beast, then at his staff watching through the observation window. They had witnessed something unprecedented today. Not just the surgery, but the courage it represented. The willingness to see past instinct and fear to the individual suffering beneath. "Thank you," Doctor replied quietly, "for teaching me what bravery really looks like." The recovery room was too small so they'd cleared out an entire quarantine suite. Doctor had argued it was for safety reasons, but truthfully, he wanted space to observe this unprecedented situation. A human and a war beast, separated from the rest of the station by transparent aluminum walls that had been designed to contain biohazards, not friendships. Hadn't left side in 48 hours. He'd pulled a chair close to the recovery bed, sleeping in fits and starts, always waking when the war beast stirred. Doctor found himself checking on them more frequently than medical necessity required, drawn by a fascination he couldn't quite name. On the second day, woke fully for the first time since surgery. Doctor was running his morning checks when those black eyes opened, focusing immediately on the doctor. Every instinct screamed at Doctor to run. The war beast was conscious now, aware, potentially aggressive. Lips pulled back, revealing those terrible teeth. Doctor froze, his appendages withdrawing reflexively into his carapace. This was it. The predator would attack. His staff had been right to fear this moment. Then made a sound, something between a rumble and a chirp. His tail, which had been still throughout recovery, thumped weakly against the bed. Once. Twice. "He's saying thank you," said, stirring from his chair. He looked exhausted but smiled broadly. "That tail thump, it's how show gratitude." Doctor stared. "He's thanking me." "You saved his life. Of course he's thanking you." Stood, stretching his stiff muscles, and moved his head. The war beast immediately turned his attention to the human, that threatening display transforming into something almost affectionate. "Feeling better, buddy? Doctor did good work." Made another sound, softer this time. His good forelimb reached out, gently touching his hand with his claws retracted. The gesture was so clearly loving that Doctor felt something shift in his understanding of the universe. "I need to check your sutures," Doctor said, approaching cautiously. "Is he going to allow that?" "Just move slowly and let him see what you're doing," advised. "Talk to him. He might not understand the words, but he understands tone." Doctor extended an appendage toward the surgical site, moving as suggested. "Good morning. I'm going to examine your injury. This won't hurt." The war beast's eyes tracked the movement, but he remained still. Doctor carefully peeled back the bandaging, revealing the healing tissue beneath. The regeneration was progressing nicely, the scales already beginning to regrow around the edges of the wound. "Excellent progress," Doctor murmured. "The secondary heart is functioning at 85%, Much better than I'd hoped." "Hear that, buddy?" said. "You're healing up great." Over the next few days, something remarkable happened on Sanctuary 7. Word of the human and his war beast spread through the station. At first, people came to gawk, pressing their faces against the observation windows to see the impossible sight of a prey species doctor treating an apex predator. But gradually, the fear began to fade. Doctor found himself giving tour, explaining the surgery and recovery process to curious staff members. Thera, who had been terrified initially, now entered the recovery suite regularly to change bandages and check monitors. She still moved cautiously, but Doctor noticed she'd started talking to the way did in that soft, reassuring tone. "He likes you," observed one morning as Thera completed her rounds. Thera's vocal sacs pulsed with embarrassment. "I'm just doing my job." "No, really. See how his tail twitches when you come in. That's excitement. You're becoming part of his pack." "Pack," Thera tested the word. "It's what we call it on Earth. Wolves, dogs, they think in terms of pack. Family is the same way. He's decided you're safe, which means you're family now." Doctor watched this interaction with growing fascination. He'd begun taking notes, documenting everything he observed. The way's body language changed depending on who entered the room, how he responded to different tones of voice, the clear preferences he showed for gentle handling over clinical efficiency. On the fourth day, something happened that would change Sanctuary 7 forever. A young child named Pip was brought to the medical bay. She'd been on the pirate-attacked cargo hauler, and while physically uninjured, the trauma had left her catatonic. She wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat, wouldn't respond to her parents or the station's counselors. Standard treatments weren't working. Doctor consulted with the family, trying various therapeutic approaches. Nothing reached her. The child simply sat in her hospital bed, staring at nothing, trapped inside her own fear. On the sixth day, Pip's father carried her through the medical bay for their daily checkup. They passed the observation window to his recovery suite, and for the first time since the attack, Pip reacted. She pointed. Her father, a cargo specialist named Dort, nearly dropped her in surprise. "Pip, what is it?" The child's finger remained extended, pointing at the massive war beast visible through the transparent aluminum. Who had been dozing, opened his eyes and looked directly at her. "That's the creature from the rescue," Dort said nervously. "The predator. Don't be afraid, sweetie. It can't hurt you through the wall." But Pip wasn't showing fear. She was showing interest. Her eyes, which had been dull and unfocused for days, suddenly held something like wonder. Doctor made a decision that would have seemed insane a week earlier. "Would you like to meet him?" Dort's vocal sacs inflated with alarm. "Absolutely not. That thing is dangerous." "I don't think he is," Doctor replied, surprising himself with his certainty. "And your daughter is responding to him. That's the first response she's shown to anything." "It's because she's traumatized. She doesn't understand the danger." Had been sitting with as he did most hours of the day. He stood now, approaching the window. "Actually, maybe she understands something we don't. Kids often see the world differently than adults." "I will not risk my daughter with that monster," Dort said firmly. "Then just let her look," suggested. "I'll bring closer to the window. No contact, just observation. If she gets scared, we stop immediately." Doctor watched the internal struggle play out on Dort's face. The fear of the predator warred with desperate hope for his daughter's recovery. Finally, hope won. "Fine, but at the first sign of distress, we're done." Return to speaking softly to the war beast. Still recovering but much stronger now, rose carefully from his bed. He moved slowly, favoring his healing limb, and approached the window. Up close, he was even more intimidating, his massive form filling the view. Pip's eyes widened, but she didn't cry or pull away. Instead, she reached toward the window, her small hand pressing against the transparent aluminum. Tilted his head, studying the child with those bottomless black eyes. Then, Moving with surprising gentleness, he extended his good forelimb and placed it against the window, aligning with Pip's hand on the other side. The child made a sound, the first noise she'd made in days, a small, wondering laugh. "Impossible," Dort breathed. But it wasn't impossible. Doctor was watching it happen. A traumatized child finding comfort in the presence of an apex predator, because somehow she recognized that this particular predator wasn't a threat. "Can I take her inside?" Dort asked suddenly, "to actually meet him?" Doctor hesitated. "That's a significant risk." "She's been dead inside for days," Dort said, his voice breaking. "This is the first time she seemed alive, please." Looked at Doctor, then nodded. "I think it'll be okay," is good with vulnerability. It's like he can sense when someone needs gentleness. Against every professional protocol, every safety regulation, every instinct of self-preservation, Doctor opened the quarantine suite door. Dort carried Pip inside, moving with visible trepidation. Remained still, watching them approach with patient eyes. "Slowly," coached, "let her set the pace." Dort knelt a few feet away, holding Pip but not restraining her. The child stared at and stared back. The moment stretched, silent and profound. Then Pip reached out. Dort's grip tightened reflexively, but he didn't pull her back. Pip's small hand extended toward the war beast, fingers spread. Lowered his massive head, bringing it within reach. She touched his scales. Made that rumbling purr sound the one had explained meant contentment. Pip's laugh came again, stronger this time. She pressed both hands against his head, feeling the texture of his scales, the warmth of his body. "Big friend," she whispered, her first words in 6 days. Dort was crying, his vocal sacs pulsing with emotion. Doctor found his own appendages trembling, but not from fear, from awe at what he was witnessing. Over the following weeks, something transformed on Sanctuary 7. Pip's recovery became the talk of the station. She visited daily, sitting beside him while he healed, talking to him about her fears and her dreams. The war beast listened with patient attention, occasionally offering that rumbling purr when she seemed distressed. Other trauma patients began requesting time with. An engineer who'd lost his arm in the pirate attack found his phantom pain eased while sitting near the war beast. A pilot suffering from anxiety attacks reported feeling calmer after just a few minutes in its presence. Doctor documented everything, his initial case notes expanding into a comprehensive study. He consulted with behavioral specialists and medical experts across 3 sectors. The consensus was clear. Something about the human-predator bonding dynamic had therapeutic applications that traditional medicine hadn't even considered. "You've created a revolution," Doctor told one evening. They were in the recovery suite, watching sleep with Pip curled against his side, her parents standing nervous but accepting nearby. "I didn't create anything," replied. "I just refused to be afraid. The rest kind of followed naturally." "That's the revolution," Doctor said. "Choosing compassion over fear. It's not something my species does instinctively. We've spent millions of years running from predators. You've shown us a different way." "Humans aren't special," said. "We just had different circumstances. Earth made us understand that everything dangerous isn't necessarily an enemy. Some of the most dangerous things can be your best friends if you give them a chance." Doctor published his findings in the Galactic Medical Journal. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Medical stations across the galaxy requested information about the human protocol, as it was being called. The concept of using bonded predators as therapy animals seemed insane to many species, but the results were undeniable. Sanctuary 7 became a training center. Doctor found himself teaching courses on human-animal bonding principles, on reading predator body language, on overcoming instinctive fear responses. Healers from dozens of species came to learn, initially skeptical but gradually transformed by what they witnessed. The breakthrough came when a physician named successfully bonded with a rescue predator, a wounded hunter that had been scheduled for euthanasia. Following methods, speaking gently and offering trust, formed the first non-human bond with an apex predator. The achievement made interstellar news and stayed on Sanctuary 7 for 3 months, until both were fully healed and ready to travel. In that time, they'd changed the station fundamentally. The medical bay now had a dedicated wing for animal-assisted therapy. The staff who'd once fled from now competed for shifts working with him. On their last day, the station held a gathering in the main concourse. Hundreds of residents came to say goodbye, many of them patients whose lives had been touched by the unlikely therapy team. Pip was there with her parents, completely recovered and thriving. She hugged Sneck fiercely, whispering promises to remember him. The war beast's tail thumped against the deck, his way of saying he'd remember her too. Doctor stood with as they prepared to depart, trying to find words adequate to the moment. "You've changed everything," Doctor finally said. "Not just medicine, but how we see the universe, the predator-prey dichotomy that's defined our civilizations for. You've shown us it's not that simple." Smiled, his hand resting on his head in that familiar gesture. "The universe is full of artificial categories: predator, prey, dangerous, safe. But individuals don't fit into categories. They're just themselves, trying to survive, looking for connection. That's what taught me." "What will you do now?" Doctor asked. "Keep hauling cargo, I suppose. Maybe help other rejects find homes. There are a lot of creatures out there deemed too gentle or too different. Somebody should give them chances." Doctor's appendages extended in the gesture of deep respect. "Then let me give you something. A license as a certified therapy animal handler. It'll allow you to bring to medical stations across the galaxy. Share what you've learned with others." Took the data chip, his expression thoughtful. "You know what? Maybe I will. Has more healing to do. Turns out the beast everyone thought was worthless is actually priceless." They walked together to the docking bay, moving easily now despite his limb. At the airlock, paused and turned back. "One last thing, Doctor. You asked me once why humans befriend predators. I've been thinking about that. Maybe it's because we understand something fundamental. Everything that lives wants to be seen, known, valued. When you look past the fear and actually see the individual, you find that most creatures just want the same things: safety, companionship, purpose. Needed someone to see him as more than a failed weapon. You needed someone to show you that fear isn't wisdom." "And now," Doctor asked. "Now we both know better. That's worth everything." And boarded their ship, the engines warming with a deep thrum. Doctor watched from the observation deck as they detached and maneuvered away from the station. In his appendage, he held a data pad containing his research, the documentation that would reshape galactic medicine. But the real change, he knew, wasn't in the data. It was in every healer who'd overcome their fear to treat a patient others called untreatable. It was in every trauma survivor who'd found healing in an unlikely friendship. It was in the fundamental shift from seeing threats to seeing individuals. Behind him, Thera approached, her posture more confident than it had been months ago. "Doctor, the new patient has arrived. Another predator species. The staff is requesting guidance on the human protocol approach." Doctor turned from the window, his appendages steady. "Tell them I'll be right there. And Thera, remember what we've learned. Approach with calm, speak with gentleness, and most importantly, don't see a predator. See someone who needs help." Thera's vocal sacs pulsed with understanding. "The way would." "The way we all should," Doctor corrected. He took one last look at the departing ship, now just a bright point in the darkness of space. "The way we all can, if we choose courage over fear." As he walked back to the medical bay, Doctor thought about the human's final words. The universe was full of artificial categories, walls built by fear and instinct. But walls could be torn down. Categories could be questioned. And sometimes all it took was one person willing to kneel beside something terrifying and whisper, "Relax, buddy." The medical bay doors opened to reveal a hunter, wounded and snarling on a stretcher. The staff stood back, uncertain. But Doctor moved forward without hesitation, his appendages extended in peace rather than defense. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Doctor. You're safe here. Let me help you." The snarling faded slightly, confusion replacing aggression. Doctor continued speaking, gentle and steady, channeling everything he'd learned from watching a human love a war beast. In the observation area, staff members watched with wonder. This was the new Sanctuary 7, built on principles that would have seemed impossible months ago. This was the gift that and had given them, the courage to see past fear to the individual beneath. Doctor knelt beside the, offering trust where instinct demanded flight. And in that moment, he understood what it truly meant to be a healer. Not just treating injuries, but healing the divisions that fear creates. Not just saving lives, but building bridges between species that evolution had kept apart. The hunter relaxed slightly under his touch, the same way had relaxed unders. The same way countless others would relax in the years to come, as the human protocol spread across the galaxy like a quiet revolution. Because in the end, the most dangerous predator in the universe wasn't the one with the sharpest teeth or the strongest claws. It was the one who refused to let fear define them, who looked at something terrifying and saw a friend instead. It was the one who understood that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to act with compassion despite it. It was the human who knelt beside a beast and whispered words of comfort, and in doing so, changed the galaxy forever.